So welcome to the final chapter of Figma Masterclass. We're going to learn annotations in Figma. So far what we have covered is how do you structure your files and the fundamentals of Figma. Then we learned about how to create everything on Figma. Then we learned how to create efficiently with auto layout. Then we learned how to create efficiently and scalably with design systems. And then we learned how to add life to your creations using prototypes, and all of these had both theories and practice files along with tasks for you. And now finally we are going to learn how do you communicate to your stakeholders, to your developers, to your product managers, to your senior management, to your fellow designers about what your design is and how to consume your design, right? So without wasting much time, let me deep dive into what we're going to learn this time, right? So we are going to learn how to use sections. Why do we need an archive section, arrows, notes, links, comments, prototype, right? All the ways how you can actually communicate your design to your fellow stakeholders. So let's start with sections, right? How we use sections is it is a part of file management, right? So in general, you will have your pages here onto the left hand side, and then for each flow, for each segments, you create different sections, right? So here you can see main flow is a section and error states is a section, and these sections are inside another section called annotation demo. So you use section to basically group different frames together or group individual flows into one section. Again, there is no rule as to say that this is the only way to use them. These are just tools available to you, and how you organize your content, how you organize what your designs are in order to communicate better, it is up to you. This is just one example. So what I'm saying is what you can do with sections is each individual flows can be separated out using sections because each screen is made up of frames. Now next is most likely need an archive section. So archive would be yet another section. Let's say this is an archive, right? So what you can do is you can have a few more screens here, and then let's say this is an archive. I usually like the archive sections to be slightly grayed out so that people know that it is an archive section. For example, if I click here and I go here, and maybe I'll go here and do it 50%. Usually I like my archive sections to be grayed out, something like this, right? So archive usually contains any previous ideas, any brainstorming that you have done, and so on, right? Similarly, if you have done some research could all be gathered together. You can say that research dump is one section and research insights is one section, or any ideation and stuff like that can be one sections here, right? And anything that is not useful anymore or is just outdated can be placed into archive. Okay, and over time you can clear this archive. If you think that those things are just adding to the noise, then you can delete those archives later, but it's just a good practice to have archive as a section. Next is arrows. See, there are two ways to actually communicate using arrows. One is like you can see here, I can actually draw it from here and here. It is a very clear communication that if somebody clicks here, then they will come to this page. If somebody clicks here, they will come to this page, right? So how you show what happens in different clicks or different interactions is through arrows, right? Sometimes it's not even interaction, right? Like for example, how would somebody come from this page to this page? So you can say that if there is no input for 10 seconds, then user will land on this page, right? Something like that you can also talk about. Now one thing to note is I can pinpoint say that if user clicks on this button, they will land here. Or another way to communicate the same is I'll just draw an arrow from here, right? Instead of drawing it from here, I'll draw it from here, and I'll say here that the interaction is user clicks on the submit button, right? And then you land here. So there are two ways to do it. One is you pinpoint where the interaction happens, or you just draw it from the center of the frame and tell that this is where the user has interacted. I typically prefer doing it, but then there are times when this is not possible to do because maybe it's just too difficult to pinpoint everything, right? And sometimes what we want also is sometimes we want people to take screenshot of this and put it into presentations, right? If that is the case, if they want a very clean presentation and they don't want to rely on designers to basically send them these png files, then in that case you might want to just not overlap anything on these design screens, and hence you can prefer doing it like this as well, right? So these are just two ways of using arrows, and whatever you prefer you can go ahead with that. Now next is notes. You can see there are few different types of notes here. So these yellow ones, these blue ones, and then there are a few notes here as well. So if a particular note applies to, multiple screens or a part of the flow, then I prefer using a note that looks something like this, which means here there will be text, there will be a header, and then there will be a rectangle which says that this is the scope of this note, right? Or if the note is just valid for this particular screen and it's almost like a dev note, then you can just have it something like this as well, right? Again, you can build a design system of your annotations. For example, all your arrows and all your notes can be part of a design system, which means all of the notes would be consistent and would be used across teams in a similar way. So for example, if a developer goes from team A to team B, they should be able to read your notes and understand, okay, this is for me, this may not be for me, for example, right? Again, you can use colors to differentiate different types of notes. For example, this can be a dev note, and this can be, let's say, linked to some documentation for the PM to refer, or maybe this is just to make the file much more readable, right? And similarly, you can have notes pretty much for all the screens that you have, but typically what we do is we make sure that you don't just fill up every screen with notes, right? Because there must be some form of PRD that is written somewhere. So you need not write everything with notes, but whatever is crucial need to be written, right? Next is comments. So in comments, you can actually tag people and say that, hey, update the illustration on this one. Even I use comments as a to do. For example, let's say I'm having a discussion with my PM and sharing this file with them. I'm running them through this documentation, and then they are saying that, hey, actually, we need to add a secondary button here as well in order to promote something, right? Let's say promote something like let's say they say that, how about we promote a card here, right? If that is their idea. Okay, so what I can do is, instead of designing it on the call itself, I'll just take a note for myself, right? I'll just say add promotion for feature X, right? And then take a note, and then I'll tell the PM that, hey, I've taken a note of it and I'll see what I'll do about it, right? And that's it, right? So this is something that you can do. Even you can tag your developers and say that, hey, can you check the feasibility? I'm just thinking about a design like this. Can you check the feasibility? So these are all asynchronous communication, right? Synchronous communication is when you get on a call and talk to them. Asynchronous is when you leave comments to them, when you leave messages to your stakeholders and they reply to it at their own convenience, right? So comments are used for asynchronous communication, and you can use them like this. I use it for to-dos as well, right? And the way I resolve these to-dos is basically I can go here into comments and I can see that all the latest comment that I have put down, right, comes here in a sequential manner. So this is easy for me to basically resolve. Let's say I have designed this or I have addressed this comment, then I can go here and click here and this will be resolved. And if I want to look at the comment that has been resolved, then I can simply click here, go to this position, right, and show resolved comments, and it shows resolved comments as well, right? For now, I'll just switch it off and this is fine. So links is also a type of comment. You can give your links here. You can write text and then, instead of putting the entire HTTPS colon slash slash www, instead of all of that, you can actually, do this, which is you write the text here, right? Select it, go here and then paste the link, right? You can do that as well. And this is how it will appear. Okay. And you can use links not just for websites but for Figma sections as well. For example, if I click here, go to here, copy paste, copy link to the section, right? If I do this, command L or control L on Windows, then I'll copy the section, right? And then I can use it in a link. And how it will be used by other people, if I click here, see what happens. I'm zoomed in into this section, right? It is not editing. Okay, if I click here, I go here, right? So what you can do here is, then let's say after this flow you go to the beginning of another flow which is not part of this particular page. Let's say it's a part of a different Figma file altogether, right? So you can say, after done, you can say that, then you add a note here that you go to link to another area, right? You can say that this goes to another page, whatever that page name is, you can write here, and then when user clicks on it, they would go into that particular Figma file and that particular Figma section or that particular Figma frame that you would have tagged here, right? So this is very useful when you are annotating your file. So everything did not be in the same page. It can live in multiple pages. And of course, you can use colors to differentiate different kinds of notes. So this is notes for developer. This is links out. So I have used different colors. Okay. Again, one of the use case is writing out different cases when certain screens would appear in different states, right? For example, here I could have written that this page appears in case, so and so error occurs, or this page appears when so and so error happens, right? For example, when there is a server error, show this page. When there is an input error or invalid input, then show this page. When a certain condition is not met, then show this page, right? So I can write down all my different cases here. Whatever note I want to write, I can actually write, right? There is no constraint and there is no one way to do it. You can do it however you feel is the best way to communicate. And last point is prototype. So prototype is also another way to communicate. We have talked about it for 30 minutes in our previous videos, so I'll not get into too much about prototyping, but I'll tell you the difference between when to show prototypes and when to do this as a presentation, right? This is actually much faster to communicate if you actually look at it, right? Because you are seeing 4 5 screens, 7 8 screens all together, and okay, this leaves here, and then okay, this is the flow and so on. In prototyping, what happens is you focus on each screen separately, right? So you see one screen at a time, this screen at a time. The prototype gives you a realistic sense of how a design is going to look like in your phone. However, this flow is essentially much faster to communicate. So when you are with your developers and you want to communicate a flow, you actually use this flow diagram. Or if you're with your product manager or with your designers, this is actually a much better presentation to show them than using a prototype. And prototypes are typically used for marketing and for communicating special interactions. For example, if I were to communicate how this card works, right, I'll actually create a prototype and tell all of this through animation, right? Say that this one rotates, this one expands, all of this goes down. All of this communication is hard to do it in text here. It's much better to do it with a prototype here. So sometimes when you want to actually, showcase a particular interaction, right, or showcase your product in marketing, then the prototypes are required the most. For developer communication, if you have atypical interaction, then you use prototype for it. But otherwise, to communicate flows, you typically use these diagrams, right? So in short, for interactions, prototype; for flows, flow diagrams. Okay, all right, so that is all about annotations. This is again one way to communicate. You don't have to follow it like a bible, but this is just for your inspiration. I'll provide you the file for your reference and you can use it if you want. But that's it for this video. Make sure that you have covered all of the chapters, and this is all you need to basically learn everything about Figma, at least the most important 80% of the Figma that is actually used in the industry, right? Everything else is actually a supplement, is a top up on the foundational knowledge of Figma. So this is it for this series, the Figma Masterclass series, and I'll see you with more videos on UX. So please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.